right, team. Welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm hanging out with Carl Christensen today. And Carl, I'm super excited to have you on, man. You had reached out, we chatted a little bit, and I just knew that I needed to learn some more about you. And I think the community did as well. I've been seeing you on the leaderboard. You're putting up some freaking fantastic times. And so I hate to admit this, but my instinct is like, who is this guy? What? Who is this guy putting up these crazy times? And so I love the fact that we now get to connect and hear your story. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's rather humbling that you'd even ask. I've been listening to this for a while and hearing the guys you have on here, guys and gals, and I'm like, I've seen them at competitions. I've been cheering for them even at games and everything. And I was like, he's asking me. I'm just a regular dad, just trying to be as fit as I can. So I'm excited about it.
Well, thanks for saying that, man. And I think that's true for everybody. We're all just we're all just people and who happen to like fitness a lot. And so that's our commonality. Let me give you a quick intro here. So, Carl, you're 35 years old. You're an anesthesiologist and then some. You live in Indianapolis. You're working out of your home garage. You've been doing CrossFit for over 10 years. You're a former college distance track athlete. I think I see
Mm,
that showing up in a lot of places on the leaderboard. You're
yeah.
one of 6 kids. You're
Yep.
an aspiring CrossFit Games athlete. And last but not least, you're a Boulder athlete. And you've been with Boulder for about 2 years now. So you're
Yeah.
also a husband and a father, if I didn't mention those 2 things, which are big parts of your life, no doubt. And yeah, man, so much to get into. And by the way, you've got some of the most creative and fun sounding hobbies. You listed many, and I don't know how the heck you do all this stuff, man.
I just joke with people that if you have enough hobbies, if they start looking too closely at one, you can just show them another so they don't see that it's, just kind of average at the end of the day. But no, I've got a lot of things that I enjoy doing and keeps things interesting throughout the day.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you probably have a very interesting day. And in fact, that's kind of where I want to start. So, life of an anesthesiologist, super interesting. We've not had anybody, I don't think, in the medical profession on yet. We've had many in the service. And so talk me through a little bit about life as an anesthesiologist. And what I kind of want to get to as well is like, then how do you balance that? Because no doubt that's a demanding profession with all the things that you do. And that's a big teaser. We'll get into some of those other things as well. But walk us through life as an anesthesiologist.
Like, So, went all the way through medical school, went through the match. So that's basically this process. It's like a terrible dating app where you say, hey, I really want to do this subspecialty after medical school. And you put all your eggs in that basket. You interview at, I think I did like 20 different programs. And then on one day, they send out an email that just says, either yes, you made it into your specialty, or no, you have a week to scramble into something else. And then
Oh, wow.
if yes, here's where you're going. So I went to medical school here in Indianapolis. We matched out in Cincinnati, and then I was there for 4 years. That's really where we kind of started truly kind of pushing things into CrossFit, mostly because residency was so demanding time wise. After I finished, we came back to Indianapolis. We were pretty rooted in CrossFit at that time, and I was starting to try out some competitions, but then, was really focusing on the career. So currently, I have finished not only my anesthesia residency, so I'm an anesthesiologist board certified, but I also did a pediatric subspecialty. And so another year of training after that. And then I signed on with the academic division here at Indiana University. So I cover 2 different hospitals, Methodist Hospital, which is like one of the major trauma centers here in Indianapolis, as well as University Hospital, which focuses on a lot of like hepatobiliary and transplants. So I will rotate back and forth between those 2. I spend about 50% of my time at both. Yeah, I actually got off a call this morning. So I take a 24-hour call about once a week. You'll work 24 hours in-house, in the hospital, we call it in-house. And then schedule varies day to day. We always know when we're starting, but depending on what you've been assigned, what room you're in, what cases you're doing, the ending time is not always super consistent. But I always know when I need to be in, so that I have time to like see my patients, prep the operating room, get all my medications ready for them, and talk to any other specialty that might need to be involved with the case. And then usually finish up, if I'm not scheduled to be late, usually done around 4. So I usually go in around 5:45 in the morning and usually finish up around 4:30 in the afternoon. So really not too bad as far as hours. I'm probably there about 60 hours a week, 60 to 65, depending on the week. So then it's just a matter of Basically, I say my selfish time is 4 in the morning, so I pretty much keep the same schedule. It's like get up, do my devotions with a cup of coffee, head right out to the gym, and then I'll admit I try to fit like the whole 2 hour elite block in about an hour and 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
my rest times are a little fuzzy on that one, and then it's get inside, pack things up, and head into work.
Man, that is jam-packed. That I mean, there's a lot there. The most recent thing that you said really relates, probably the most relatable thing for me is trying to cram all of the elite track in about 70 minutes, 80
Yeah.
minutes. That's exactly what I do every morning as well. I've got very limited time and I am absolutely cooking through that thing,
Oh
and
yeah.
which makes some of those elements back to back really tough when there's really no downtime between the battery section and like the final boss, Metcon.
Absolutely.
Those get a little
Absolutely.
spicy. But man, okay, so you're getting up at 4 in the morning. That's I'm not doing that. That's no joke. And you work out of your home garage, and so how do you manage all the clanging and banging in there without waking up the family?
My wife implemented a no dropping weights rule. So we do have some crash pads. So when I'm doing like the clean and jerks, it'll pad it. But for the most part, she requires that. Like she tells me, if you picked it up, you can put it down. So you mostly have to just catch it or really control the descents. That's why when I'm doing like a qualifier, I'll often go to a gym so that I can do those quick like drop reps and
Ugh,
let things bounce a little bit more aggressively than I might at home.
yeah, you no doubt about it. That's a disadvantage if you're trying to control the descent of every rep.
Yeah.
And you're still putting up some insane times on the leaderboard. So man, you're super fit. Now I'm trying to picture now you running around for 12 hours a day or 13 hours or whatever your schedule was, jacked up in your lab coat or your doctor's jacket. Is it safe to assume that you're a bit of an outlier physically there at the hospital?
I would say so. I mean, there are some people who I mean, a lot of my colleagues definitely stay in shape and they're taking excellent care of themselves. People tend to know that I pretty committed to our sport. And so they like to talk with me about it. I would say it probably stands out a little bit. I don't always feel like I'm necessarily that I look like that fit or an outlier. But occasionally someone might mention it. A patient might be like, "So do you work out?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, occasionally." So it does come up. It does come up. I don't really think about it that often. I still kind of see myself as the little distance runner that I was for so long. But yeah, I would say it does come up for sure at work sometimes.
There's no doubt. Yeah, in a place where health is the biggest priority inside of a hospital, people take notice of those that are healthy and those that are unhealthy. It's right in front of you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm sure it's come up, and I hope in a very positive way, and hopefully in an inspiring way for some of your patients.
Yeah, I hope so. I really enjoy what I get to do, and part of my job is also I'm an associate professor, assistant professor of clinical medicine there. So I have residents with me, and I do a lot of instruction and helping them go through their programming, so their 4 years of training, and just encouraging them with health and wellness as well is like a big thing. They're trying to juggle schedules that are even crazier than mine, more hours than mine, and just like talking through, how do you fit in, still taking care of yourself. Actually, this upcoming weekend, one of my residents who we talked about it. He got started in CrossFit about 5 months ago. He was like, I really want to try a competition. I was like, let's do one. So here in a week, we're gonna throw down together. And
Wow.
that's been an awesome part, being an educator, but also getting to spend time like encouraging them as they're like working through their craft and figuring out how to balance the time aspect of everything has been really meaningful to me.
That's really cool. I mean, well, I would love to get into some of your insights and takeaways and like what are some of the
Yeah,
things that you coach them on? Because while we're not all dealing with, 80 hours work weeks, we are all dealing with many, many distractions and responsibilities and, things that are pulling us in multiple directions, which take up 80 plus hours a week. So I think
absolutely.
even though our circumstances are different, the way that you're navigating that, I'm sure there's some real interesting bits we could glean from it that our audience would be interested in. So, yeah, what are some strategies and tactics and ways that you navigate that, and then help coach others too?
Yeah, for my residents, as they're going through, first, what I try to do is I'm very open with them that I want them to leave their program not just like limping to the finish line, like finally I'm done, but
Right.
finishing loving their specialty, finishing strong in their family relationships as well, and finishing ready to like take care of their patients. A part
Love
of
that.
that is just, talking through being there for the challenges, being present as an attending. So when they're taking care of patients, being readily available, walking them through parts, encouraging them in their procedural skills as they're trying to learn the new techniques and learn the pharmacology. I'll do a lot of mentoring on top of that. And when we're talking work-life balance, my wife and I will put on different events for the residents that's like outside of work. And we really emphasize also just really including their family and their kids because you spend so much time at the hospital away from them that even if it was
Mm,
something they might want to do, one more thing that's pulling them away from family is really tough to try to fit in. So we really
yeah,
try to do that on top of it. And then it does come up and things about fitness, health, wellness. You'd be surprised that for being a hospital where we're supposed to really promote health, the lack of access to truly like healthy food during the day. Doctors probably have some of the worst possible sleep schedule ever. So
yeah,
they're and then there's a ton of caffeine use, and even now the nicotine pouches and things like that, just to try to stay alert and focused. So spending a lot of time and just saying, really be purposeful with your time. Really be purposeful with your time. I know that about my final year of residency, I'd had a smartwatch my whole time through. I could get messages in the operating room from my staff, or even if I was up on the floor seeing a patient, and I could just like quickly look down, see if it was like something emergent, or if I could respond to it later. Was it my wife texting me about something that like really needed a phone call? Could I wait? What I found though is it started to bleed over into home life. I'm fortunate as an anesthesiologist that we don't take out home a lot of work the way other physicians might.
yeah.
Um, but you still get messages about things. You still are being in communication. And so I talked with them and I said, at my fourth year, I got rid of the smartwatch because I found I'd be playing with my kids. Something would come through. I'd be looking at it. Then I'd be like, I should probably respond to that. I should probably go and look into that, even
Hmm.
if it was something that could wait. So when I tell them when they're at work, we talk a lot about learning strategies as far as how to study, when to study. And then I also tell them when you're at home, be at home. Be at home. If you have to do some of your patient prep or studying at home, go and do that, but make sure that your time is set apart. I always say, like, if you're not a person who can work out in the morning, but maybe you can get up and while you have a cup of coffee before driving in, that's when you can get in a little bit of reading and education. Do it then and completely focus. And then completely focus, even if you only have a half hour to go for a walk, to go for a jog, be purposeful in it. Don't get on the phone and start scrolling. Don't get distracted by something else because the next thing you know, you'll be like, well, now I only have 10 minutes and I kind of wasted those 20. Just go out and do it. So it's more when your time is so limited to be incredibly purposeful about it and then make sure your priorities are set. For me, when I get home at the end of the day, it'd probably be a more ideal time to do my working out, but that's my family time. Like I pull up in the driveway and I just tell myself, your job's not done. Like now your job is being a dad, being a husband, taking care of the home, making sure they feel loved. And so it's 100%. I go in, make a bunch of chaos. The kids come running over and I'm down
Hmm.
on the floor playing with them and giving my wife a little break to go and, uh, invest in her health and fitness or just something that she would like to do. And it's the same for my residents, same for folks around. It's like, make sure you set your priorities. And when you've decided, like, this is when I'm going to do something, you just have to zone in and do that.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. I love the intentionality, and that I mean, the truth is that that is a skill that requires conditioning over a long period of time. It's for someone that may not be super intentional with their time today. This is definitely not a switch that you flip and all of a
Yeah,
sudden you get to be really intentional. That's you got to start with some micro moments of intentionality and then build those up
absolutely.
to live a life of intentionality. And I think that's the probably a goal we should all be striving for is to
Yeah.
be as present and as intentional as possible with every moment that we're blessed with. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's really cool. I hope folks take some nuggets out of that. The level now of intentionality that you must have has got to be incredibly high because let me now list off the things that I've heard you say and things that you are interested in, and I'm not going to get
Yeah.
them all. So,
Yeah.
4 thoughts for me, but you are an anesthesiologist, which we've covered.
Yeah.
Check. You're a dad. You're a husband. You play the guitar and the piano and the clarinet, and you
Hmm.
do graphite something or
Portraits. Yeah. I'll do
graphite
portraits.
portraits.
Yeah.
You bake wedding cakes.
Yeah.
which is no small feat. I was telling my family about them, like, "Carl, this guy that I'm gonna do a podcast with, guy's got, like, 45 different habits or hobbies, and I think he does these legit wedding cakes. What have I missed here? I know some big things. You're a professor, an assistant professor as well.
Mhm.
How the heck do you balance all this stuff, man? Don't give me the intentional speech like, "This is hard."
If you look at my Whoop data, it says my sleep is non-existent.
Yeah, I'm like, "I don't know where you're getting sleep in, pal."
No, I mean, it's all things that I just love to do. Like the music, I knew that I was going to be a physician like my whole life, but I also loved music. And so I was like, this is my time to go as far as possible. So in undergrad, I was like, I'm going to be a music major. I'm going to do all of that. I'm going to go as far as I can. I'm going to perform. And now,
Mm,
now it's about playing for the kids. And like, I do other things, I'll play as a sub in several of like the bands and orchestras, or I've played for some weddings and things like that. But now it's just for fun. It's something we all enjoy. My daughter loves to like get on the piano and we'll play together. And
mm,
then she'll be like, "Daddy, play the ballerina song." And I'll just play a song and then I call it the ballerina song. And it's just fun. And now like I had been probably a little bit more prolific in my artwork previously, but now it's just really fun. I'll sit there and I'll like draw for my boy. And when I take care, I'm in charge of all the pediatric patients that come to our hospitals. And so every time a kid comes, when I see that I'm scheduled for that for several days in advance, I always draw them a picture. Like I look through their chart, I see about how old are they, or if they sometimes they have like child life specialists who have listed some of their interests or something they love. So I'll always have a drawn card for them. So as they're waking up out of anesthesia at the end, that's there for them. But it's been
mm.
fun. Like I actually have a picture back up on my garage wall of Stacy Tovar. She had reached out to me. Gosh, it would probably be probably 18 or 20. It was shortly after, not too long after she had retired, but she'd been out of the game for a little bit. And she's like, "Would you draw this picture of me crossing the finish line on one of my events?" And so got to do that for her. And there have been a couple athletes, Noah Olson, and that's been really cool to get to do. Um, yeah, it's just
Well,
it's just a lot of stuff.
okay, so you're not just a hobbyist drawer, like, you must be really freaking good. If you've got essentially celebrities reaching out to you to draw them, how would they first have known about this skill of yours? What is your association with
I used to, for a while, I had an Instagram page and I would like post my artwork. And that's how Stacy Tovar found it. And then it's just kind of gone from there. And then there's been like word of mouth for friends, or, some folks will know that I do it and then they'll be like, "Hey, would you draw this family?" Or, there are people at work and then they tell people at school. I mean, I don't know. It just kind of gets around a little bit. I don't know. Hopefully,
so
it's I
cool.
mean, hopefully I'm not over speaking and you guys see it and you're like, "Those just look like stick figures." But it's been fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I'm fortunate to get to mess around with it a little bit. But I think it was just because they found it on Instagram.
Okay, well, now I need to do a little hunting on your Instagram. You might also have to take a couple snapshots and send them my way so I can infuse them into the podcast here for folks to
Yeah,
check
man.
out. That's really cool, man. That's really darn cool. I don't think anybody has shared anything quite like that on the podcast yet.
I
So,
think the only thing that's as stressful as like waiting for 3, 2, 1, go. For like a big event though is like transporting a wedding cake. My wife was like, she told me, she was like, "I don't want any part of that anymore." Yeah, because I did one this past December. And I was like, I put on the final touches and it was like an hour until the wedding. So we are just going to put it in this huge, like industrial fridge. My arrogance got the better of me. I was like, I can lift this thing in there. Like it was like 60 pounds of cake, but I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine. I'll be fine." And I lift it and I start to put it up on the shelf and the whole shelf just like gives out. I caught it. I caught the cake luckily on the stand, but then like the door was like half closed on me. Thankfully, my brother was around the corner and I was like, "Jason, get in here. I need you to like open up this door and help me." I was like, I don't know what I would have done. Like if I just obliterated their cake an hour before their wedding. But yeah, that's why my wife was like, "I can't be a part of this anymore. It's too stressful watching you like try to move these in our car and things like that." But it is fun to do. It's a lot of fun to do.
you're like a one-stop shop now for like a party. You're just a party in a box. So you you can bake the cake, you can play the instruments at the party. God forbid somebody goes down, you're gonna take care of that at the party. You can draw some portraits, on the side and entertain the family and friends. Boy, you're good company, I think, Carl.
Like I said, as long as you're average at a lot of things, people don't have time to look too close. No, it's fun. I enjoy what I get to do, and it's opened up doors. I've gotten to do missions, medical missions, and set up trips overseas to help out and do education and teaching and help out with cases. And now I get to do. I never thought I'd be talking to a games athlete. That's always been like a huge goal of mine. Once I kind of shifted from distance running, started really focusing on CrossFit, started getting pretty deep into CrossFit. And I was like, well, I'm not that good at it. I don't think I have a single fast twitch fiber in my body. So like weightlifting was terrible. But I remember there was one open that was like rowing and wall balls, and I just sent it. And I don't remember my exact placement, but it was like way, way up there. And I had a great time. And I was like, if I could get, technique on things with the gymnastics and I could get some strength, like my engine's okay. So it kind of like started the idea. And my wife and I would, watch the Buttery Bros and all the documentaries that were coming out. So more and more, I was like, boy, I would love to be able to do this someday. And then, it finally found Boulder. And literally within the last 2 years, it was like qualified for MFC as an individual. I'd gone a couple years team, but qualified as an individual, started winning some local competitions. Like my strength numbers started going, for me, like way, way higher. Like I'd never hit a 185 snatch in my life. And then the other day we were supposed to do like multiples after like a ski erg, with fatigued arms. And so I started thinking about it and was like, I should have a roadmap too. And so my tentative plan was like, first off, I was like, I should try to talk to someone to even see like, one, is this even a feasible goal? Here's where I'm at now. But I was like, I bet if I hit some benchmarks, and I was like, when I turned 30, I was like, I wonder, if when I hit 35, I make a 5-year plan. And it's like, make it to MFC, just make it. Like, get myself in the door. I finally, I qualify, and then make it to MSP, but finish in like the top 10, even if that's just in RX. But then that next year, try to go for elite. And then the fourth year, top 10 elite. And kind of as a gauge, because so many of those folks are just like absolutely wild. And then that fifth year, Christine and I were like, our kids will be, our youngest that'll be born will be, about 4 years old. My oldest will be almost 10. She was like, that would be a great time to say, look, why not give it 1 year of like truly focused intentionality where you do all the right things. You put in that second capacity session after work. You really focus on the mobility. Not that you're not doing those things all along, but like 1 year where you say, look, we're gonna we're gonna really make a run for it.
Yeah, right.
And if you make it, you get to say you're a games athlete, for the rest of your life. And if you don't, you got to spend a year like kind of living the life of a games athlete. So that's
Yeah,
kind of the tentative plan right now that we're working towards.
that's really cool.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I'm rooting for you, and I mean, look, objectively, just based on some of the numbers I've seen you put up, and your engine is very high. I can't say I have a full assessment of all of your strengths and opportunities to grow as an athlete, but based on some of the scores I've seen on workouts that I know I have really been challenged by, I'm like, dang, this guy is putting up some super legit scores. So, I mean, your fitness is certainly there. You know you best and where you got to fill some gaps. But man, the consistent thing I've seen, and it's kind of an obvious statement over the years, many years of CrossFit, is like, man, the athletes that I've come across that have like soccer backgrounds or endurance backgrounds, they tend to do so well in CrossFit because the engine is there. And like building the strength, yes, can take many years,
Yeah.
but I find that building strength is easier to get motivated to build than building an engine is to get motivated to build. And while I think building your engine can happen in a much shorter time frame, which is encouraging, the work is not as enjoyable.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
it
Just like
takes.
track interval work. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish I could say I loved track work and just putting in hours on the treadmill, and no, I don't. And that's why I am the way that I am and built like I'm built. And endurance is my weakness. And That has been a big focal point for me, but yeah, to know that you're coming in with such a strong engine and then hyper motivated, clearly very intentional with your time. I'd be scared to think of what you could accomplish when a person as intentional as you gets hyper intentional
Yeah.
about building your strength. I think the sky's probably the limit for you.
Well, we'll see. That's the goal. I know Boulder's been phenomenal for that because even like you said, the leaderboard is very motivating to a guy who likes numbers. I will admit I was a little butt hurt the other day with like the burpees and max cal ski. I did that one, and for a while I was like at the top, and I was like, I don't know, it'd be pretty hard to beat me. I was really yanking on that thing, and then 9 other people just like swooped in front of me. I was like, oh well, I tried. I can't remember the guy who finished that one first on the overall leaderboard. I was like, that is insane. Like absolutely insane. I think he had like 78 reps or something between those rounds, but it's really fun to look at. Sometimes,
It is.
sometimes you look at that, like you've mentioned it on here where you're like, how on earth? Like how on earth? I almost died. How did they do that? But it's very motivating. It's very, very motivating. And it's just fun. There are a bunch of guys, Brad Townsend, Tim
Mhm.
Sanchez. There are a couple other guys where we always will like go through, we message each other about it because we kind of see where each other are stacking up. And so it's really fun. Like you meet a bunch of people too. And it's a great community. I mean, it's when we've gone to Masters Fitness Collective, we all were meeting up. We're discussing strategy before workouts. We were hanging out together. Some people would like do the workout first and then they'd come back to the group and be like, oh my gosh, don't go out hot on this. Or they'd be like, just send it. It's not as bad as it seems. And that was just a blast. And then even, I mean, it's just crazy. You've got a guy like Jason Grubb, he's like one of the all time most decorated CrossFit athletes ever. And he's just like hanging out there with you. I like walk up to him before this sandbag event at MFC and I was like, what's the strategy here? He just like took 5-10 minutes, talked through it, and I was like, all right, I'm on. And then like went out and I didn't do what I normally do, which is immediately get sucked in and go out way too hot. But I was like, all right, we're gonna pace this right. And like took first by a decent margin in that. And it was really cool. And then he's like standing right in front of me too. And you're like, man, I've been watching this guy for
That's
years.
cool.
And now he's like watching me like, this is wild. This is just wild.
That is such a cool experience. There's a bunch of things going through my mind at the moment. One is the last podcast that we just did with Eric Moore, 56 years
Yeah,
old. Um, he had an experience where he went to MFC for the first time. He felt like an imposter, but then he got there and it was awesome. And he met Jason there and just walked away with a very different experience and how motivating that was. The thought of going, like getting over the hump to go to one of those competitions, while can they be intimidating? You betcha. You
yeah,
bet. There are some incredible athletes there. But then you get there and it's just the most humble, hardworking, good,
yeah,
honest people trying to go put their fitness on display just like you. And so you establish these connections and some camaraderie like almost instantaneously. And then what's really special about, Boulder and other communities, it's not only exclusive to Boulder, although I think Boulder does a nice job with this, is like building those connections. And then when you do get to go to those events, you have this instantaneous bond and like you have
yeah,
friends that feel like you've known forever, even though you've just met them for the first time in person. And
absolutely.
I had that exact experience, and so it's very real for me, and I want as many people to experience that as possible, and so a few things. One, if you're not engaged in, like, Circle and the Boulder community, get in there and
Yeah,
start making connections and making your voice known because you're truly gonna build some authentic relationships. And then get yourself signed up for a competition that's appropriate for you and go meet some folks. And because I think it's just going to strengthen those relationships all the more. And it can be incredibly inspiring and super, super motivating. So I'm glad you had a cool experience like that. That's pretty
oh,
awesome.
love to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I will admit, the imposter syndrome feeling is definitely real. You walk in and there are just some
Yeah.
monsters, just absolute monsters. And then like you said, you go over and you talk with them, and there's great guys and gals, and you're just like, you're incredible, And then you get to be side by side thrown down next to them. One of the years, gosh, who was it? One of the former games athletes. He was 35 to 39. Just like he subbed in for someone's teammate. And there was Rudy Berger. There I am. Where it's like
And Rudy.
one of the last events of the weekend. A teammate had gotten injured and they wanted to finish though. And he had been he was there and they're like, "Will you just dive in?" And so I'm like in the middle of this echo bike workout. I look over and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's Rudy Berger," and then we talked afterwards and just had a great old time. I mean, that stuff's it's just crazy. It's just crazy how fitness can really bring people together and you're pursuing a similar goal. And at the end of the day, even though we all like to compete, it's also about like being healthy, being like having this sport for our life so we can continue to do these things. And it may sound cliche, but like all the things we're doing are hopefully helping us stay in a spot where we can continue to do the things we love outside of the gym, that we
Mm,
can be hoisting our kids up or eventually grandkids up, that we can be still out going on hikes and walks. So much of what I see in the hospital, if you really boil down to root cause, it's, lack of diet and lack of movement. And, it's very sad to see kind of the progression of where a lot of folks go. And it's just like, this is such a cool thing to do where if you can make it not just about like, well, I got to only do this for health. I really hate being on the treadmill for this time. Or I really hate going into the gym, but you can have a community like this where it's just fun. You always have these like small goals that you're working toward. And because you have that goal, then you are like, well, I do better if I eat better. And I also want to beat this one person because it's kind of fun, but you're all encouraging each other. It
mhm.
really pushes everyone towards that common goal of like living well and being able to be present again. If you're not able to move well, you're not going to be able to be as present with the people around you or participate in the things you'd like to do. And so that's a really cool thing to get to be a part of.
Well said, man. Very well said. I could not agree more. As you've been sharing that, I'm still thinking about this, and apologies in advance. I'm circling back a little bit here, but like this imposter syndrome thing, I think it's worth double clicking a little bit here because the reality is that I don't know if everybody's right, but a lot of people experience this in various aspects of their life. We're talking about in this fitness space where you go into a competition, you feel like an imposter. You can feel like an imposter at work. You can feel like an imposter in your own house. There's imposter syndrome that exists in
Yeah.
many flavors and many places. But in this specific instance, I actually think that imposter syndrome is probably the default feeling, not the minority feeling, when you
Hmm.
go to a competition like we had just discussed. Because you think of like to be a competitive CrossFitter, you got to be pretty darn self aware. You got to be pretty well in tune with yourself, how
Yeah.
you move, where your strengths and weaknesses are. You've definitely been humbled countless times in the gym and by the people around you. And if you do that day after day after day and you keep signing up for a butt kicking, each day, you can't help but be very aware of what you're not good at and, kind of sensitive to the things that might expose your weaknesses. Well, welcome to a competition. It is that.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
to walk in and not be feeling like you have some imposter syndrome feels a little bit crazy, because now I'm trying to picture the person that does walk in and doesn't feel that. You know, I don't
Yeah.
know if I want to hang out with that person. That's a very arrogant, very overly. Now you can be confident, and that's a core value of Boulder. We want to be confident because of the preparation that we have done.
Yes.
But even though I walk into a competition with a lot of confidence because of the work I put in, I still have that imposter syndrome. So the only reason I wanted to kind of double click on that is because I just want to acknowledge the fact that like that, I think it should exist. I think it's a good default feeling
Yeah.
because it also helps motivate us. It does help us stay humble, which is another core value of Boulder. Yeah, and I just think it's kind of the necessity to help push you to what you want to accomplish.
I think
Sorry, that was
just
a soapbox
no,
moment
I
there,
think
Carl.
that's really well said. I think that's really well said. And uh, a lot of my folks that I work with, and even myself at times now at work, though I've been at it a while now, would say that about medicine too. You come out and you're like, you come
Yeah.
out of medical school, and next thing you know, they're looking at you like, doctor, what do you want to prescribe for this? And you're just like, me? You should probably
I'm
ask
the
like a
one that has to have
doctor.
answers
Like,
now.
yeah, and I was joking, just talking with Christina about this very thing, and I was like, it's just now in my career where it's becoming less often where you have those moments of like, man, am I should I really like am I really here? Am I actually qualified to do this? But it's a good thing. And I talk about it with my residents, kind of like you said, I have not thought of it in terms of imposter, but like you should always, when you're taking care of your patient, you should always be questioning, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
I'm seeing this on my monitor. I'm seeing with the vital signs. I think it's this, but I'm also willing to kind of expand and be like, question myself to a good point where you're saying, I think it's this, but could it also be these other things, But don't let that fear of like, I don't know, should I really make a choice then handicap you from making a decision that you need to do for your patient in that moment. But yeah, that's really a really well stated way of saying that, everyone kind of feels a guess you all always kind of look at the folks you really admire and you're like, there's no way. Like, there's no way Josh Boonstra walks into an event and worries about it. He's like, all right, looks around and is like, I'm taking these guys.
Hmm,
That's how it feels.
right.
Then you mentioned, you're walking in and you're like, man, I got some work to do. And you've been seeing the leaderboard too. And the people around you. Really humbling to hear it from folks you look up to.
Yeah, well, that's cool, and I mean, having now got to hang out and talk with Jason a bunch, and we become close, and, like, it exists for him as well. Now, is he tremendously confident? Yeah, absolutely. Has he earned the right to be? You bet he has, but he's just as human as anybody else, and so, does he get butterflies before he gets on the floor? Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, golly, that's definitely the case for me. Still, I mean, actually, I don't let's not go down that path. I want to focus this conversation on you. I could ramble on about, my anxieties getting into the competition. But at the end of the day, it is those things that help push us to be better.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so experiencing that can be really healthy and it shouldn't be over consuming and overwhelming, but it can be a source of fuel when you can harness it in a really productive way. And so I think acknowledging those anxieties and fears is like it's required. It's totally a healthy thing. So, and I'd be willing to bet that the most accomplished people in any field probably deal with this exact thing.
Yeah,
They're so self-aware and so driven, and that drive doesn't necessarily come from just overwhelming amounts of confidence. It comes from a number of places, one of which is like fear of failure and
yeah, for
wanting to
sure.
please the people around them and feeling like an imposter. Like these are also sources of motivation that just often don't get talked about, but they exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. That's a good discussion. Hopefully, folks find something interesting in there and some core takeaways. Let's shift the conversation a little bit here, Carl. You had also mentioned a couple other things I wanted to get your perspective on. You had mentioned like your athletic journey. So we've talked about kind of your aspirations. I want to go way back now. You said as an unhealthy kid, you were overweight. You then
Hmm.
became this collegiate runner, and then you're now an aspiring CrossFit Games athlete. But during that unhealthy stage, you said you also had developed this unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
And this is something that I know a lot of people are dealing with in various degrees, but I want to hear about your story around this. What was that relationship with food like? Where did it start to become unhealthy? How did you navigate that? How did you overcome it?
Yeah. So I was initially probably more likely to put the whole tub of cream cheese onto my bagel in the morning. It was actually like no idea about really what was healthy or not. My parents did a good job of making sure food that was healthy was there. They wanted well-rounded meals, but my own personal choices were certainly not there. What kind of happened was initially my older sister just like walks into my room one morning, like wakes me up. I was not a morning person. And was like, hey, you need to go on a run with me. And I was like, there's no way Fat Carl's going to go on a run. And she was like, no, I signed you up for a half marathon, the Indy Mini marathon. I was like, oh, that's terrible. But I got into it and I, over time, just really, really fell in love with it. About that time, though, I started, went through a good growth spurt, once I was also running and like really getting into these distances, was losing weight. And it became less about health and more about numbers and was I, like, did the scale stay the same? I did a ton of calorie counting at the time. And like in retrospect, it's really hard for me to see and be like, why would I have done that? I feel like it would have blunted so much of what I could have done. But in my mind, it was like, if I should really try to not have any more than like 600 calories a meal, like, because, the recommended is 2000 calories a day, but I'm kind of a smaller guy. So I should keep it at that. And I did that. I tried to be as close to that as possible, irrespective of how much I was working out. There was a lot of like guilt associated with food. If there was like a day where I really like just broke down, had a bunch or whatever, it was
Yeah.
like, man, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that." And even within that, again, the emphasis was so much more on the numbers. What does a package say as far as calories and fat? But no actual real knowledge into like, what does your body need? Like, is this a is this a helpful calorie? Is this going to be moving you towards a goal? Not even that. So not even like macros or, it was purely just my own self making these arbitrary rules. And I started to become more aware of like, okay, this isn't me trying to reach a goal or be healthy. This is a this is a problem. Like this is an obsession that's not healthy. But it was challenging too because it was kind of in this disguise of being healthy, right? Well,
Mhm.
I'm not going to have any of the dessert tonight because in my mind I've already kind of tabulated like how much have I had and how much am I allowed to have. So I started to become more aware like this is a problem. This is a problem. It's not the way we should be living. It's not the way you should approach food. And of course, around this time, Christina and I, my wife, we've been dating for a while, and I started realizing, this was all the way now into college. I'm still kind of dealing with this and also trying to juggle, you know, the double majors and now, competing. And I started recognizing like, this is not the way to approach it. And thankfully with Christina's help and prayer, just really started to focus more on, and it was really hard to break just because I'd gotten in such a habit of like mentally tabulating so fast. But
Yeah.
we started saying, what should we focus on? And my wife said, start with every day. I want to get 5 different veggies in. Like if you need a number, 5. So that if you have to count something, you can say at this meal, I had tomatoes, I had some spinach, I had this. Like make it so that you have 5 different vegetables and different serving of those vegetables every day. And so it
Yeah.
kind of gave like an emphasis on eating right. And then at the same time, when kind of towards the end of the college track career, starting to find CrossFit as we go into medical school. And the emphasis in CrossFit was like, who cares what you look like? It's
Yeah.
not about a number on a scale. So we actually got rid of our scale. Like we didn't even own one. To this day, we just don't have one. And then Christine was like, let's see what we can do with our bodies. Why would you worry about, well, if I eat this, am I going to look a certain way? It's like, well, what do you want to do? What can we do? And the emphasis in CrossFit was so much that. And so that really helped break it. So I mean, quite a few years of really struggling with that. I think when I got married, I was like maybe 115 pounds and still just as
150
tall.
pounds? How
Yeah,
tall are you?
yeah. 5'10".
Holy cow. Yeah, you were lean, man.
I was very lean. Now
Wait,
I could
are
run
you
a lot faster than I can now,
115? Oh, that's very light. Okay.
but I mean, I could run fast
Yeah.
for a
Oh,
long time.
absolutely good.
It should be about nourishing your body. You should understand like what you're giving yourself and why. Um, and was very fortunate enough to break out of that cycle, that I frankly wasn't healthy. And I'm very, very fortunate for my wife for all of that, especially, but because she had to kind of work through all that with me.
Yeah, that's, what you said there in terms of the tactic on counting the number of vegetables. That's a really interesting and very specific, and I think, like stash that away, put that in your back pocket, folks. If you're dealing with something similar, because like the act of counting can become obsessive, right? Where
100%.
it's like because you're just conditioning your mind to focus on numbers, and in this case, numbers get focused on the total number of calories that you're consuming.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we don't calculate the number of calories we're expending, only the calories that we're taking in. And when that ratio gets wildly imbalanced, you pay the price, in so many areas of life. And yet, we don't tend to acknowledge those things. We still just get more and more focused on
Yeah.
the calories themselves. And that can be a really, like, just a spiral, a downward spiral. And, I'm sure you've counseled folks on this and spoken to folks, but those that have dealt with eating conditions, this is a part of that. And that can take on many flavors, but certainly this is one of them. And so what you said, I really love is like, hey, take this step to continue the counting behavior, but you just, you simplify it radically.
Yeah.
And now you're not counting calories, you're just counting the healthy things that you've consumed, the number of healthy things that you've consumed. It gives you a number to focus on, which is great, but it eliminates volume, the you know,
Exactly.
precision around the volume and just eat healthy things. And that's a really good like switch to flip while not radically changing the behavior because you maintain some of the similarities around the number. That's really smart. That's really strategic. And yeah, I like that a lot. That's a good nugget.
All my wife. She's the brilliant one in the family.
Yeah. What does she do, by the way?
She did occupational therapy and then did pediatric occupational therapy, but she's at home full time now. So she's still doing pediatric occupational therapy, but with a smaller client base, just our couple of kids at home.
Oh, that's awesome the way you said that. Well done. Well done. Points to you, Carl. Let's see, man. We've touched on so much good stuff here.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoyed this discussion. Is there anything else you'd like to get into with our time together?
I mean, I'm just so grateful for Boulder and the purposeful planning and like I tell people all about it. Like if you're in the CrossFit space or even if you're not like fully into CrossFit, but you're just trying to be healthy, and a lot of my colleagues, they're like, well, what do you do? You know, I tell them about Boulder because it's so well laid out and purposeful. I've never been injured since doing it, you know, not even just in not at all. I mean, it's been really excellent. And again, the community, you like get on there and like everyone is rooting for each other. You know, you watched Open going into quarterfinals, now into semifinals, and literally everyone's like, they're on there, they're talking. And I mean, it's just a great community. Really grateful for what you guys do in the leadership there for this podcast. I mean, the opportunity to even come and talk, you know, and be considered an athlete, you know, when it's just something I'm striving for at the end of the day, or I should say at the beginning of the day, as just another guy trying to enjoy fitness and competition. I really appreciate all of it. I think the question I had was when you were getting into CrossFit, at what point did you really think to yourself, or what did you see when you were like, I could make I could make a run at the games? When did you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I've told the full story. I've talked about bits of this for sure. When I first got into CrossFit, it was because I worked at a gym and we were going to create a program that was like similar but not CrossFit. We wanted to
Mhm.
go understand what is it. I went and got my level 1. I was so impressed with the coaches there. I got it with Chris Spieler and Adrian Conway and Pat Barber
Yeah.
and some other guys, and was just like, these guys are incredible. Like, not only are they awesome athletes, which I got a ton of respect for, but they are so articulate, they're so intelligent, the way that they communicate the methodology, I'm like, this is nothing like the reputation I had heard. And so that just kind of blew my mind. And then my boss at the time and I went and we did CrossFit at a local gym for about, I don't know, 6, 7 months or so. And we're just trying to understand, like, okay, what does this look like in practice now? And like, okay, we've identified some really cool parts of this. We had a very specific demographic and kind of member type at our gym where like CrossFit is not going to be the thing for them, but there's parts of this like metabolic training and metabolic building that I think would be great. So we generated this program. It ended up being very cool and successful. And that's what I did primarily. And so it was very much about metabolic building. And we didn't do any Olympic lifting. We didn't do really any heavy barbell work. It was a little bit of gymnastic. It was basically like a super scaled program, but more volume. And so, but it was cool and it was really engaging and it was really working at the gym. And then naturally, like as I started to do that more and more, my engine started to build up a little bit. I was a terrible CrossFitter, but I got somebody conned me into doing the open and I still have videos from way back when doing snatches and double unders and I couldn't really do either one. So I'm tripping all over the place. My snatches look horrendous, but there was a leaderboard. And as a former
Yep.
athlete, it was all about that leaderboard. And
Absolutely.
it was an embarrassing place on the leaderboard that I occupied, but that was the start of like, I just need to quantify my fitness and be able to compete against other people. And now I'm in and I'm hooked. And I saw 75 things that I sucked at and needed to get a lot better at, and that I was getting beaten by from everybody around me. People of all shapes and sizes that I thought I should be outperforming them on were beating me at all of the things.
Yep. Yep.
And so, man, as a former college athlete, I was like, that's unacceptable. I actually was a very good athlete from like a coordination and explosivity perspective, but I had none of these skills. Like I just
Mhm.
couldn't double under, just couldn't do it. Could not do a ring muscle up, could not do a bar muscle. I couldn't walk on my hands. I couldn't do anything. So fast forward a ways, eventually, you start to accumulate those skills and then I got to the point where I always wanted to become a regional athlete. I just never could. I just couldn't qualify for regionals. And that was a little frustrating because I felt like I had the capacity. Uh,
Yeah.
I just wasn't meeting the mark still. And then regionals goes away and I never got to accomplish that. Then we tried to do it as a team and but I had the bug now on like, I want to go to the next level of this thing. At no
Yeah.
point was I thinking about the games. And then in 2015, through my work, we got to go to the games as a vendor, and I sat in the audience and I watched the Masters come on. It was Ron Ortiz, and I remember watching
Yep.
him in this event, and he's this big, jacked up guy, which by the way, I've got a chance to work out with him and hang out with him a little bit, things, and he is such a good guy. And in 2015, I remember telling my buddies next to me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this one day. And because it was masters, I felt like, that gives me a much longer runway.
Yeah.
And while I'm not a games athlete at that point in time, I'm really disciplined and I'm really consistent. And I think that that ultimately is going to allow me to be a games athlete someday. And so I'm playing the long game. And then it was in 2024, like in 20, I think 22, 23, I don't know. I think I qualified for semifinals. I did semifinals one of those years. The following year, I qualified again, but was like, this is just too much on the family to go find a gym and get a judge. And all. I was just like, I'm over it. I didn't even do semifinals. And then it was in 2024, I qualified again. And finally, some people around me were like, dude, Josh, you could go to the games. And I was like, no. That's not I don't think that's possible. They're like, no. And I had one guy who was like, Josh, and he had been to the games as a team. He's like, I'm coming over. We're going to do all these workouts together. We're going to get you to the games. And that was one of the first moments where I was like, this guy thinks I can go to the games.
That's awesome.
And that kinda got me fired up, and so then that changed my level of focus and intention in that semifinals, and I
Hmm.
had a group of friends, the Wolf Pack, they were all behind me and,
Yeah.
had been a really big part of my success and just, like, over the year keeping me encouraged and had helped me get my fitness into a different place because we were all competing against each other, and then in semifinals in 2024, they went pretty good, and I qualified, and I was just, like, in total shock. I was in total shock because the year did not start like, that wasn't on my list of things to accomplish to start the year. It wasn't until semifinals where it's when someone was like, "Josh, I think you could do this if you wanted to. In
Yeah.
fact, let's do it." And that just flipped a switch in me. I was like, "Well, I'm at least gonna give it my best shot." And now I'm at least looking at the games, as, like, the goal
Yeah.
that that got me there. And then I show up at the games in 2024, and you wanna talk about feeling like an imposter, you betcha, I had it, but then you do the first event, and I took 4th in the first event, and I was like, "I think I can hang with these guys." This might not be
Yeah.
so and that year at the games, it was definitely a roller coaster. I had some moments that were awesome, and I had some incredibly frustrating and humiliating moments as well, and I ended up finishing 13th when all was said and done, so I was happy with that.
Yeah.
But to walk away from that now, sorry, this has been too long of a story, but to walk away from that, I realized, 1, like, I do have what it takes to be a games athlete, and now I actually see myself as a games athlete. That was a big moment where I'm like, "Well, now I'm going back. I don't see myself as anything but now. So anything less than this will feel like a failure," you know, like, just to be
Hmm.
it's the way I kind of phrased it in my mind. And so that created a whole different level of focus and training and tension over the course of 2025. And thankfully, got to go back, finished 4th, was very
Yeah.
happy with that. And now this year, I've put more pressure on myself to go back and do it again and try to do even better. That's the long story. Your question, I don't even remember what your question was. When did I think I could do it? It wasn't until that moment where somebody, like, looked at me and said, "You can. I believe in you. Let's do this."
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the moment where my focus really and my goal formally shifted.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you need some people in your corner because Carl, I'm telling you, buddy, you've got some real capacity based on what we've seen from the leaderboard. So now, like, what do you think are the holes that you need to fill most immediately? And by the way, have you qualified for semifinals?
I didn't this year. There was a lot that happened that weekend, just a lot of family stuff. My dad found out he had multiple myeloma and like all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
almost didn't do it. My wife was like, "Well, you already signed up. Just go and try it." So don't look at the leaderboard on those ones. It was still fun. It was still fun, but no, I was way off of what I was hoping to do, but I was glad I did it. So I have not qualified for semis.
Okay. Well, good for you for doing it. Small world, multiple myeloma. That's my mother-in-law had that as well, and that's a very rare it's a very rare thing, so we should connect offline about
Yeah.
that. What was I
But
gonna
yeah,
say? Oh,
no,
yeah, 35 to 39 division is absolutely stacked. That is
yeah.
a very, very difficult division to qualify for, and now having some of those guys that just moved up into my division, I'm recognizing that because it has
Yeah.
shaken up the leaderboard, and so now I gotta deal with these guys, which I'm
Yep.
not super excited about. But you had also mentioned, I think, that your goal was at the 40 when you turn
Yes.
40 and move into that division, that's kinda like the timeline for your
Yes.
qualification. I think that's a great goal. I mean, I think also the space has gotten so competitive and the concentration of really elite athletes has grown so much
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
you're gonna have your work cut out for you because that group is naturally just gonna evolve with you, and so it's really
Yeah.
a matter of, like, who's gonna stay with it with the most intentionality, the most consistent. We'll
Yeah.
find out in a handful of years here, Carl.
I know. I know, right? Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. Well, let's stay in touch, dude. This was such a good discussion. I'm really
Yeah.
grateful that you made time for this. Thank you again. Yeah, let's find a way to stay in touch, Carl, because I'm gonna keep an eye on you on the leaderboard, that's for sure. Now that I know you, I'm gonna be watching with an extra special eye, but I'm rooting for you,
Absolutely.
buddy.
Of course. Well, thank you, Josh, and thanks to the whole Boulder team. Honored to get to come on and talk to everyone. It's cool to be a part of it. You know, I've been listening for a long time. So thank you so much. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.